The dirt hits her face as they seal the tomb. She pounds against the stone walls, screaming into the darkness. Rome's most sacred priestess is being buried alive, and her only crime was falling in love. Imagine being chosen at age 6 to serve Rome's most powerful goddess. You're given luxury, respect, and influence that even senators envy. But there's a catch, one that would make modern dating apps look like child's play. You must remain a virgin for 30 years. Break this vow, and Rome doesn't just fire you or fine you, they bury you alive. Welcome to the world of the Vestal Virgins, Rome's most revered and most trapped women. For over 1,000 years, these priestesses held the empire's sacred flame, literally keeping Rome's power burning. They were untouchable, unstoppable, and utterly controlled. Think your job has strict rules. These women lived under a religious contract that would make your worst boss look like a saint. They couldn't marry, couldn't have children, couldn't even touch a man without triggering an investigation that could end in death. But here's what'll blow your mind. They were also some of the most powerful women in ancient history. They could pardon condemned criminals with a gesture, owned property when other women couldn't, and walked the streets without male guardians when that was unthinkable. Drop a fire emoji if you think you could handle 30 years of celibacy for ultimate power and respect, because what you're about to discover will make you question everything you thought you knew about ancient Rome. But the punishments for breaking their vows, that's where this story gets really dark. Picture this. You're 6 years old, playing in your family's villa when Roman officials arrive. They're not here to arrest anyone. They're here to honor you. You've been chosen to serve Vesta, goddess of hearth and home. Your parents are weeping, but not from sadness, from pride. Your selection brings prestige to your entire bloodline. You'll serve for 30 years, 10 learning, 10 serving, 10 teaching, and if you survive, you'll retire wealthy and respected. But that word survive isn't just dramatic flair. The Vestal Virgins lived under the most extreme religious law in Roman history. Their primary job? Keep the sacred flame burning. If it went out, Romans believed the empire would fall. The pressure was literally civilization ending. But the flame was just the beginning. These women performed secret rituals we still don't fully understand, held classified state documents, and advised emperors on matters of war and peace. They were walking, breathing symbols of Rome's divine protection. And here's where it gets insane. If a Vestal Virgin was even accused of breaking her vow of chastity, the punishment was so horrific that it makes medieval torture look merciful. But wait until you hear what they considered evidence of guilt. Because in Rome, you didn't need proof to destroy a Vestal Virgin's life. You just needed suspicion. And what happened next reveals the darkest side of Roman justice, where superstition met sadism in the most terrifying way possible. Imagine living under constant surveillance, where every glance, every conversation, every moment of your life is analyzed for signs of impurity. This was reality for Vestal Virgins. Romans believed that a virgin's loss of chastity would literally curse the empire. Plagues, military defeats, natural disasters, all could be blamed on a corrupt priestess. So when things went wrong, Romans looked for a scapegoat in white robes. The accusations were often absurd by our standards. Laughing too much at a festival? Suspicious. Talking privately with a male relative? Evidence of guilt. Having the sacred flame go out during your watch? Proof that the gods had abandoned you because of sexual impurity. But here's the psychological horror that'll make your skin crawl. The trials were designed to find guilt, not innocence. Romans used divination, examined the entrails of sacrificed animals, and looked for signs from the gods. Your fate literally depended on how a sheep's liver looked. Pause the video and guess what do you think was considered the ultimate proof of a Vestal's guilt? The answer is so twisted it sounds like something from a horror movie. Some Vestals tried to defend themselves, presenting witnesses and logical arguments. But Roman justice mixed law with religious fanaticism in ways that would make witch trials look reasonable. Because once you were accused, you faced a choice: confess and face exile, or maintain innocence and risk the most terrifying execution method ever devised. And what happened to those who chose to fight? That's where this story becomes a nightmare. They called it living burial. But that sanitized term hides the true horror. When a Vestal Virgin was condemned, Romans didn't just kill her. They created a death so terrifying it was supposed to cleanse the entire empire's sins. Here's how it worked, and this is historically documented, not Hollywood fiction. The condemned virgin was dressed in funeral clothes and carried through Rome in a procession that looked like a funeral because it was. Citizens lined the streets in absolute silence. Even speaking was forbidden, as if the city itself was holding its breath. They brought her to a small underground chamber called the Campus Celeratus, the field of wickedness. Inside was a bed, a lamp, some bread, water and milk, just enough to technically avoid the technicality of direct execution, because Romans believed killing a Vestal Virgin directly would curse whoever did it. Then they sealed her inside, alive, conscious, aware, The chamber was designed so she could survive for days, maybe weeks, slowly suffocating or starving in complete darkness. The psychological torture was the point. Romans believed her suffering would appease the gods and restore divine favor to the empire. But here's the detail that haunts historians. Some chambers have been found with claw marks on the walls. And if you think that's the worst part, wait until you hear what happened to the men accused of seducing them. Because Roman justice had a twisted sense of gender equality when it came to punishment. The male seducers were publicly flogged to death in the forum, while crowds cheered. Their punishment was brutal but quick. The women got slow, psychological torture that could last weeks. This wasn't just ancient cruelty, it was systematic control of female sexuality wrapped in religious authority. Sound familiar? Here's what makes this story relevant today. We still live in a world where women's bodies are regulated by laws claiming moral or religious authority. The methods are different, but the underlying power structure remains. The Vestal Virgins were both the most privileged and most trapped women in their society, a paradox that echoes in modern discussions about women's rights, bodily autonomy, and the price of power. Drop a comment. Team Vestal Virgins were powerful religious leaders, or team they were victims of systematic oppression? Because the answer isn't as simple as you might think. If this deep dive into history's darkest corners got your heart racing, you're going to love our series on ancient punishments that make Game of Thrones look tame. Hit subscribe because next week, we're exploring what Romans did to traitors, and it makes burning alive look merciful. The past is darker than you imagined. The question is, are you ready to go deeper?